Good evening, Jamsters, and welcome to another edition of the Suns Jam Session podcast. It might be August. It might be 6 weeks and 3 days until the Phoenix Suns play in a preseason game on October 5th against the Los Angeles Lakers. That's not going to stop us from coming up with some fantastic content, Matthew, for the Jamsters to absorb, to talk about, to think about, to talk amongst their friends, to go up to a buddy at work and be like, hey, man, did you see the Jam Session podcast? No, you listen to it? Yeah, they're talking about the divisions right now, and they got some good things to say, clearly, right?
Yeah, they did. They did their homework. I mean, we got to dig in deep. We're going to dig in pretty deep here with all these divisions, each team, all these players. Where is everyone located, right? I mean, going into this, when we're actually going to do a little bit of a preview to the season, if some of these players pop out, I'm like, oh, if they're on this team, okay, cool. All right. This is what I think of this and this and this. Be a lot of good breakdown from the Jam Session boys over here.
Yeah, and I love doing this every year because, as you mentioned, it allows an opportunity to just kind of see what the state of the NBA is. It's the same thing, right? Like, we're all getting ready for our fantasy football drafts. For those of you who play fantasy football, either you've done your draft this weekend, you're doing it next weekend, whenever. And a lot of times, if you're not properly prepared, you'll sit there and you'll go, hold on, I had no idea that Tyreek Hill was playing in Miami now? Oh, shit. Why did I draft him so high? He's not that Patty Mahomes throwing the ball. It's Tui Tagovailoa is throwing him the ball. And I'm not a fan of that. So this is a good opportunity for the Jamsters to kind of take a look at players and the status of teams as of the time that we do the podcast, as well as an opportunity for you and I to really drill down because, you know what? We have a Phoenix Suns podcast. It's good to know what's going on the other team when we play them during the season, huh?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially in the East. One of these teams will be playing us in the finals, huh?
Right? Yeah, that's right.
We're
that
confident.
That's right.
Yep. One of these teams will be playing the Suns in the finals.
Real quick, before we transition into the start of this podcast, you've been watching the Arizona Cardinals game today?
You know what? I popped it on because I saw your tweet about the helmets. I'm like, oh, they're wearing the helmets with the stupid black uniforms. How fucking ridiculous. I'm sorry.
They look dumb, don't they?
They do not fit like I thought. It's like a nice pair of new studded like diamond earrings you got, and you have your old grandpa's sweater on. Like, what the fuck are they wearing? None of it matches, dude. It's a kind of a cool helmet, but you got to redo the whole thing. You can't just throw it on an old uniform, man.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me. It just ruined everything. You went back like 2 steps with that thing, dude.
Oh, I hear. And again, like, initially when they released the helmet about a month ago, I had said something on Twitter to the effect that I felt it was kind of lazy. I'm like, an all black helmet, that's lazy. Everybody's doing that right now, right?
Yeah,
the Philadelphia Eagles are doing it. The Jets are doing it. I'm like, and then everybody jumped down my throat on Twitter. They're like, but no, it's not black. If the light hits it just right, there's little red flakes in it. That's cool. Worse. And I'm like, watching on TV, I'm like, where's the little red flakes, guys? Where's the little red flakes that everyone was like so up in arms, like, no, it's not black. It's not all black. And I'm telling you, I was, not impressed with it. Not impressed with that helmet.
It doesn't make no.
Yeah. I'm just,
you know what? And I back you up on this one. It's not because I look up to you, John. I want you to respect me. That's not the reason. It's because they look dumb. They look so stupid.
Facts.
Like, I just want those uniforms. They look like they're 20 years old compared to that helmet, right? It just doesn't. If that's what they're going to wear,
and that's what they are. The black jerseys are 20 years old.
They're never going to win with that.
To them.
And the players know it looks stupid.
Well, and again, like, throw a white face mask on it, throw a red face mask on it, throw a yellow face mask. I don't care anything other than how it looked. And again, I just, taking a look at it, seeing it on TV, I'm reminded that so many Cardinals fans love the looks of those helmets because they're just so desperate for any sense of change. Because this team hasn't changed their jersey setup since they went to the new stadium back in like 2005. So it's different. It looks amazing. Like, but does it? But does it look amazing? The answer is no, folks.
Maybe by itself on like a naked body, but with those uniforms, dude, I don't know. All right. I'm glad you brought it up.
In the chat, he's like, y'all still crying about them helmets? Yes. Because I took so much flack on Twitter because I went against the grain on that one. And you know what? It's very quiet out there now. But anyways, welcome to another edition of the Suns Jam Session podcast. Make sure you subscribe, rate, review wherever you're consuming this content. Make sure you follow the show at Suns Jam on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Make sure you follow me at Darth Void. And make sure you follow Matthew
at Matthew Lissy.
We're going to be popping open a teeth-cracking cold Coors Light.
Yeah, we are.
Yes, we is. So crack them if you got them. Open. And we're going to be going through the Atlantic Division preview on this podcast. So we're going to start off in the Eastern Conference, and we'll go from there. So cheers. are officially 6 weeks and 3 days away from the start of the preseason, not even the regular season, but the preseason. And Matthew, tough question to begin. How many divisions are there in basketball?
There are 6.
Look at that.
You know what? Another tough question. Why the fuck do we still have divisions?
This is a great question.
They got to go away soon, but until then, we'll do a preview.
There you go. So that's what we're going to be doing on this podcast. We're not going to contemplate the why. Why are there still divisions? Because I agree with Matthew. I just stick with conferences, right? Again, I fall back on fantasy football. It's like, why are there divisions in fantasy football? If you're doing that to your league, you are wrong. But we're going to go through the divisions. But one thing that we will start off with just some Suns news. You know, the game plan, just from a programming standpoint, for all the Jamsters to know, is with 6 weeks until the preseason begins. Matthew and I are going to be going through the divisions on every single podcast until preseason begins. Obviously, training camp will begin before that, and we'll open up each podcast talking Suns, seeing if there's any new updates, anything of that nature, and then we're going to go into those deep dives on the individual divisions. We will be live on Wednesday at 8 p.m. This Wednesday, and that'll be kind of our new schedule moving forward. Is every Wednesday 8 p.m. If you want to follow us live on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, that's the time to tune in. And if you are somebody who likes to listen to your podcasts and absorb the content that way, look for that Wednesday evening. It'll go up right after the podcast is over. So one thing I'm going to start with is, you know, obviously not too much related to the Phoenix Suns going on out there, but our boy Dario Saric is out there, and he's playing for the Croatian national team. He's currently in the EUROBASKET tournament that's occurring as they get ready for kind of like the basketball World Cup over there. Matthew, have you seen anything about Dario Saric? Have you tracked what's going on over there? I know it's kind of hard. It's hard to find highlights, things of that nature, but hearing that Dario's playing, that's got to be good news, right? Oh, wait, hold on. Before I even do this, I got to give him a drop, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is. We are talking for the first time in a long time some Dario Saric, so let's give him a break.
The Saric smoke break.
Go for it. Dario Saric.
Yeah, have I checked it out? You know, I don't have a Twitter alert every time Dario Saric does something, but that would be nice if I did have that little Woj bomb thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm excited to hear that he's still alive and he's healthy. There you go. If he's playing, I thought you were going to bring it up and be like, oh, did you hear that he twisted his ankle or something? You know what I mean? Kind of like Chet Holmgren against LeBron James in his first drive.
Yeah, where did I saw you post that on Twitter. Where did that happen?
Yeah, so it was at the crossover, which is another one of those pro-am things that Jason Tatum, LeBron James, Isaiah Thomas was there, including Chet Holmgren, the new rookie.
Yeah.
He one drive, it was a fast break. LeBron had it on him. I guess LeBron just twisted and turned too much. Chet Holmgren came up limping on like his right foot and then was out of the game right away. It was within 1 minute of the game.
Oh man.
So yeah, so I was just like, that's just bad. That sucks. And it's not like, I think the whole situation playing against LeBron, against all those people are so close to you. There's a lot of pressure. I just feel bad for the dude because he went out limping right away.
Oh, that sucks for OKC fans. I mean, yeah, they're all hired for the thin towers, and they're excited for that. And oh well,
it's not over, but
no, it's just but it's like the first opportunity you have to like just oh, dude, Chet Holmgren's playing in that tournament with LeBron. That's pretty cool. Oh, 1 minute in, it's like Gordon Hayward in Boston. You know, it's like, geez. Yeah. But Dario Saric, you know, for those of you who are interested in kind of seeing some of his highlights, again, hard to scrape the internet for those. Stop by Suns Geek's channel. He did a great 5-minute video kind of talking about what he saw and finding some of those highlights of Dario Saric playing for the Croatian national team. But you know, playing well. That's what I like to see. If you watch some of those highlights, he's hustling. He's typical Dario Saric, man. Like he's on the floor a lot, right? He's diving for loose balls. He's falling down after rebounds. It's like, Dario, hey, it's good to see you again, man. And, you know, he played against the Slovenian team, which obviously has the likes of Luka Doncic, Goran Dragic, Zoran Dragic. And he led his team in scoring for Croatia. He had 18 points. He had 6 rebounds. He was 4 of 7 from beyond the arc. And on his team, on the Croatian national team, is Bojan Bogdanovic, Jalen Smith, the one with an extra E who played for the Suns in Summer League a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Ivica Zubac is on the team. So he's been out there. He's been hustling. You know, he's been doing his best to kind of one, assist his team, but two, get back in game shape. And it was great to see him just out there playing again, man. He's looking good.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear it because honestly, you miss that hustle he had all the time. It totally went away from that team as soon as he was gone. You forget how much he brings to this team. So yeah, keep rolling it up, dude. If he keeps playing that way and comes back into the season, like it's going to be very positive for the Suns.
100%. And again, knowing, I think you bring up a good point relative to his energy. You look at the second team energy unit, and they talk about the connection and how well Cameron Payne's the guy who missed Dario Saric the most, right? Because Dario Saric is a connector on the court. And if you don't have Dario Saric out there with Cameron Payne, all the connecting fell to him, and he had a hard time navigating that this past season. So you take that plus the energy level that Cameron Payne brings with Dario Saric on the court, and it's a good sign to see. And it's something that we truly missed last season. Even though we won 64 games, the bench is ultimately what kind of was one of our many Achilles heels in the playoffs. And knowing that Dario Saric could potentially be back next season, it gets me all hot and flustered inside.
Yeah, me too. And you do forget about those 1-2 combos with him and Cameron Payne, because even like when Alan Williams was on the team, who was the guard that he was playing with that was like so well?
Tyler Ulis.
Him and Alan Williams
they had a connection, yeah.
So it kind of reminds me of that in a way, but of course a little bit better in situations where you can actually play him in the season and win some games. So.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit, bracket of 64 update. How we looking, Matthew?
Oh, we're on round 2.
Yes,
we are round 2.
Now the matchups get good.
Yes,
all right, how are we looking? What are you releasing this week?
So this week we actually have 4 that already got released. Let me actually bring it up because I actually was not prepared to talk about it because I thought we were just gonna do this and then, 1 second here.
We got to start with the Suns news and then we'll go into the divisions.
Yeah. So on, there were. You won't believe this news. You won't believe this news about 3 matchups. Actually, there was 3 disqualifications in the first round. It wasn't due to just a bad moment where I didn't actually want to make a video about it. Drug use, a lot of harassment and stuff going on. So these moments were actually disqualified. So there were actually 3 teams moving on. I know. But
breaking news.
Yeah. So we're actually all in the second round right now. The last matchup that actually just went final today was from the book bracket. Mm-hmm. Booker versus the Raptors, moving on to round 3 through Sweet 16. He won
as well as
Diablo versus Chris. Yeah, definitely. That's probably one that might win it all. Booker.
It might be a Final Four contender. It's definitely an Elite 8. I'm feeling.
Yeah, and then also in the CP3 bracket, we had the FJ Crowder, 70% over Booker's hustle play against the Denver Nuggets. That moved on. And then after that, we had the Booker done dirty by the Nuggets. Of course, the same exact game where Booker on the Jumbotron, it was a different player that was thrown up on there.
That's right.
And Booker went for 49 that game. That one moved on to the Sweet 16, and it's 56% over the Payne throws it down, the dunk that came out of nowhere against the Pelicans. So
okay.
And there was just one more matchup, and that was Aiden's playoff high. Actually, is moving on 82%, moving to the Sweet 16 against McGee's Dreamy Eyes, where McGee stares at the camera for about what seems like a lifetime.
Aiden deserves that. Deserves that. So I'm 100%. I support that. So again, Jamsters, if you want to go on Twitter or our YouTube page, you can vote on these moments, the best 64 moments of the 64 win Phoenix Suns. We're in the second round now. Okay, people. There's gonna be some jockeying for position and such. You gotta get ready in there. You gotta throw your votes down. So
you got to. Yep.
All right, you ready? Atlantic Division preview, Matthew. So the Atlantic Division, you take a look at it, and it is one of the. I'll ask you this: with teams like the Brooklyn Nets, the Boston Celtics, the Philadelphia 76ers, the New York Knicks, and the Toronto Raptors, is the Atlantic Division the Eastern Conference's best division?
Yeah, there's a lot of expectations. I don't know if it's the best because in the East, I feel like everything is just so kind of watered down right out there. A lot of these divisions and teams, they seem like they should be better than what they are. But in the East, for some reason, because they play out there, it doesn't really live up to the hype. There's a lot of teams like the Knicks, who could be soaring this season with Jalen Brunson, but also just the Nets and the Sixers, right? So much pressure on them. A team that both teams that need to win it, and whether or not Kevin Durant comes back, but you're just looking at both those teams as Eastern Conference Finals contenders for sure. Just the expectations there. There's a lot on these teams, and the talent is it's crazy because even like a Julius Randle for the New York Knicks seemed to be like a star last year or the year before. I mean, so you're like, okay, the Knicks are coming too. So this seems like a division that's just made to crush everybody, but it seems like they just always let everyone down. A lot of these teams,
yeah, you're
let everyone
right,
down.
You're right though. Although the representative from the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals came from this division last year, I think that if you were to say the Brooklyn Nets, the Philadelphia 76ers, or the Boston Celtics at the beginning of last season, which one of these three teams would represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals, nobody would have said the Boston Celtics, which is kind of interesting. To your point, both the 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets vastly did not meet the expectations put forth on them prior to the start of last season. Entering this season, you take a look at it, and we put a little poll on Twitter, and we asked, who do we think, who do the Jamsters think is going to be the champion of the Atlantic Division? 62.2% said the Boston Celtics. 26.7% said the Philadelphia 76ers. Only 6.7% said the Brooklyn Nets. And then New York and or Toronto, 4.4%. So that's kind of where the Jamsters think everybody's going to land. Where do you feel, before we get into all of it?
Yeah.
Who do you think is going to win this division? Knowing that none of that shit fucking matters.
I'm going to go, and I hate to piggyback on my last prediction from last year, where I feel like the 76ers are going to be the team to beat. So I'm going to choose them. I think the Celtics, of course, had that run where, kind of like the Suns in the previous season, they were the team that came out of nowhere, where they were just seemed like dead in the water. But it was a little different because the Celtics mid-season seemed like they were dead in the water, but they came back and made it to the finals. But I'm gonna go with the Sixers because it's hard to, again. But then I don't know. It's hard to bet against a lineup with Joel Embiid and James Harden. But then it's like, how many more chances do you want to give a guy like James Harden to get his team to the finals or even win a division? But I'm going to go with the 76ers. I think this team, in my gut, doesn't feel right. My gut would say the Celtics, but in my heart, I'm going to say the Sixers for sure.
And I'm going to mirror that. I actually, on that little Twitter poll, I voted for the 76ers. And I look at it this way, and perhaps this is a Matthew Lissy kind of viewpoint, if you will. I think that they have the best player in the division, and that's Joel Embiid. I think that, you couple that with some of the guys who are on that roster. I think it's a dangerous team. And I think that, again, obviously he's got to be healthy, but I think that there's an opportunity for him to kind of step up and hit that next level. And that's because you just don't know what's going on with KD. Boston, I'm sure we're discounting them, but again, the majority of the Jamsters think that Boston is the team to beat. So that's the team that we'll start off previewing. We'll start off with the Boston Celtics. You take a look at what they've done this offseason. So the first thing they've done is via free agency, they added Danilo Gallinari from the San Antonio Spurs, who went there by way of Atlanta. And then they signed some guy whose name I can't even say, Mfiondu Kabengele, on a two-way contract. They also acquired via trade Malcolm Brogdon from Indiana, and they acquired J.D. Davidson with the 53rd pick in the 2022 NBA draft. Now, at the same time, they lost Daniel Tice, Aaron Nesmith, or Neesmith, whatever, Nick Stauskas, Malik Fitz, and Juwan Morgan, all in the trade to the Indiana Pacers for Malcolm Brogdon. They have free agents still on the roster, Broderick Thomas, who I had no idea who that is, and Matt Ryan, who I thought was playing fucking football now for the Indianapolis Colts. So you look at their projected starting five: Malcolm Brogdon, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Al Horford, Matthew.
Yeah.
So they get stronger, they get weaker, they stay the same. What do you think?
You know what? On paper, it seemed like they did really they improved their team by a lot. And you're coming off your seasons and even playoff stints with Al Horford, where they were just heroic with him and Marcus Smart. Both of those guys were they played insane out of their minds this season, especially the last half of the season. So it's kind of like, you got to rely on that again next year. You can't really, so you got to improve your team. So on paper, a Gallinari and a Brogdon look great. I love Brogdon. I think he brings a lot of toughness, but also, can he stay healthy? That's always a big question with him. Danilo Gallinari, Gallinari. He's a good player to have on your team. I just hope it doesn't really slow down the offense too much, because I feel like you have and a Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum that already handle the ball too much, maybe hold the ball a little too long. So Gallinari to me always seemed like a guy like that in a way. He's a good passer, but as long as he can get in the flow of the offense, I think he brings his team a lot coming off the bench. And I really like the Malcolm Brogdon thing. I'm kind of nervous of injury, but I think he can help his team. Get to the next level. You're saying win a championship. I think he can just keep them at the same pace, but I still think that they got better by these two additions.
I agree. And you look at their overall depth, they add Danilo Gallinari and they add Malcolm Brogdon to Derek White, Robert Williams III, Time Lord, who might get some starts over Al Horford, what have you. They got Grant Williams, who's an annoying, pesky player. Peyton Pritchard is still on the roster as well. So they have a team that has some depth and defined roles. And what's interesting about Boston is the reason that they were so successful last year is they turned it up to a historic level defensively. And they utilized that through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, and they kind of ran out of gas, right? So I don't know necessarily if it's going to be repeatable for this team, seeing as at one, how hard it is to play defense in the NBA, and 2, how historic they had to play defense to get to the spot that they were in. Malcolm Brogdon, you're going to add some offense there with him that you haven't seen from that position necessarily. Knowing that Jason Tatum is a year older and Jaylen Brown are both, a year older, a year maturer. It's one thing that when you talk about the Phoenix Suns, you have to recognize that everybody's going to take a step forward because they're all entering their prime. The same could be said about the Boston Celtics and their young stars and their core. But at the same time, Al Horford's a year older. Can Robert Williams stay healthy? Can Marcus Smart stay healthy? Of course, that's every team. You're going to ask those questions, but I think it's so vital to them because it's their defensive prowess that allowed them to be so successful. And I don't know how repeatable it is in the NBA.
Yeah, mentally, it's like we're going to have to go through that again. We're going to have to play that well and then maybe still come up short. Like, who can help us ball handling wise? Who can, get us some shots when we need shots? And Tatum should be that guy. You had the whole thing with Jaylen Brown and Kevin Durant, even though today, I think it was today or yesterday, I saw where really there was no talks. And I think it was on Twitter today. And I mean, the whole Boston and Kevin Durant thing, there was really no talks between the two with Jaylen Brown. It makes sense because Brown, I feel like, is just as good as a Jason Tatum. I feel like Brown kind of looks at a Jason Tatum like, hey, if I had your body, your size, like I would be better in your shoes. I feel like that's the way he looks at him. But it's weird how those two aren't broken up, but it's still working. So I think what they have there is really good. It's just, I think mentally just weighing on their mind that they go into next season knowing like they have to play that way again.
Yeah. And that's
you
not
always,
easy, man.
like you said, the health thing, it's like, you know what? Everyone's pretty much healthy now. We have to go through the season. And they didn't even play the whole season at all last year, right? It was just the half a season where they kicked ass. So it's a lot to come back. It's so hard to win in basketball. You know that for a fact. I mean, we know that Suns fans, how hard it is to get back to the championship. So they're kind of like the Suns going into this year. You know what I mean? They're not as hated, but they're a team that has to prove something again to get back to the finals.
Well, I'm sure they're plenty hated on the East Coast. I'll tell you that. But I agree with you. It'll be interesting to see how they respond, knowing that, Jason Tatum, he choked in the finals, and some people, I mean, he did. Yeah. He did. And if you go back and if you were to say Devin Booker choked in the finals the previous year, that's not a true statement. I mean, he was dropping 40 burgers out there. So it's a different conversation. The rest of his team kind of, they just couldn't stop Giannis. That's what it came down to. Well, I don't know. I don't want to go back down that. Next team I want to talk about, Toronto Raptors. All right. Not a lot of movement relatively that's earth-shattering when it comes to the Toronto Raptors. They added in free agency Otto Porter Jr. from Golden State, Juancho Hernan-Gomez from Utah. So what was the name of the movie he was in? Hustle with Adam Sandler? That was Juancho.
Was he in that one?
Yeah, he's the main guy.
I thought, I was thinking of someone else, but all right.
Oh. Well, there you go. Well, he's up. He's up playing in Toronto now. They didn't trade for anybody. They got the 33rd overall pick in the NBA draft, which was Christian Koloko. And that was interesting. I was going through and I was double, triple checking. I'm like, the Raptors don't have more picks. I mean, all right, whatever. They lost Armani Brooks, and they still have free agents on their roster. Isaac Bonga, Yuta Watanabe, and David Johnson, former running back for the Arizona Cardinals.
Just tall enough to make it.
Their projected starting five, it's kind of an interesting one because they have a ton of guards and they are the definition of a wing team, right? So you got Fred VanVleet, then you got Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, and Pascal Siakam. So a team that's definitely in transition mode. They won a championship a few years ago. They're now kind of just hanging back and trying to navigate a very, very tough division. What do you see when you see this team? Yeah, Bo Cruz. Thank you, Amanda. Bo Cruz was the name of Juancho Hernan-Gomez in Hustle.
Yeah, a pretty decent movie, I guess. Did you like that movie? Just really
I did like it.
You liked it?
Here's the issue I had with it. Did you not watch it?
I watched it. I just didn't enjoy it. But I think I can be moody, I think, with movies. So it might have just been my mood at the time.
I think it was a good movie. It was it became kind of like a basketball commercial after a while. And you're like, okay, I get it. He's dribbling, he's running in the rain. Come on, next scene.
Exactly, dude. But what I see with this team is it's kind of like it just seems like a blow it up team, right? I think it was until I think Scotty Barnes really got going last year. I know he had the injury in the playoffs, but it seems like a guy that kind of gave them just a little bit more power on the court, just defensively. He's definitely the guy that's going to step up next for this team. He's a guy that you can rely on as long as he's healthy. But Pascal Siakam too, it just doesn't seem definite, this team. It doesn't seem definite. I feel like I see a lot of trade pieces. I know the whole thing with OG Anunoby and even DeAndre Ayton, that was a thing. Remember a trade between those two?
Yeah, true.
So Pascal Siakam, of course, is a guy that a lot of teams might look at if this team's not doing very well to start the season, and what do they have to play for, right? I mean, I feel like the blow it up situation was so close, but then also, like you said, they won the championship before. So they kind of have that leeway now of oh, we have a few years. We won a championship. We're okay. But I feel like in Toronto, they're going to want to start winning again this year. So, if they're not winning, then I think it's a blow it up situation for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's a lot of great assets on this team that come trade deadline. You're going to hear a lot of teams lining up and trying to procure some of these players. I mean, you look at DraftKings, and right now their over under on total wins on the season is 45.5. So DraftKings, Las Vegas kind of has them as a 500 team. And I can see that because, again, as I mentioned, this is a team that doesn't necessarily have it doesn't make sense when you look at the roster, right? I mean, a ton of guards, some of them are aging guards at this point, but a ton of guards. And you take a look at kind of their overall contract situation, and they have Pascal Siakam making $35 million this year. Fred VanVleet's second highest paid on the team, 21.2. And then everybody else is kind of in that zone, if you will, that is very tradable, right? Gary Trent's got 17.5, OG Anunoby 17.3. They still have Chris Boucher, who I'm a big fan of. They re-signed him to 12.6. Thad Young's on the team at 8.1. Somebody who they traded for in the middle of the season and they re-signed this past offseason. So a lot of assets, to your point, Matthew, that if they're not cruising towards something surprising in Toronto, you better believe that probably here on the Suns Jam Session podcast, we'll be mentioning these names around the trade deadline in an effort to try to bolster our roster.
Yeah, I mean, Siakam's going to be the big one, but I think Scotty Barnes has really brought something to that team that I feel like they just didn't have before.
Agreed.
You watch Scotty Barnes, I think, has the best body language in the NBA. To me, he does, because just 2 minutes of watching him, this guy's something special, right? Just by him making a simple play or just walking to the bench, I'm like, there's something about this dude that where he was taken off towards the end of the year, but then also this season coming up, I feel like he's going to be somebody that's going to be like, is this guy an all-star? That's just the way I see him.
I can see it, man.
I see it, especially in the East. Especially in the East, I feel like there might be a spot. This guy seems like he's going to be an all-star quicker than most people think.
And a complete player. And that's going to be what the Toronto Raptors have to leverage this season, is what assets do we want to put around Scotty Barnes knowing that this ain't the season. Like as we go through the rest of this division, there's a couple teams in here that just got some heavy hitters, right? And you probably don't foresee it happening, but you got a young second-year player in Scotty Barnes. He's going into his third year. He's an amazing player. You want to start building things around him. You got assets that you can dish in an effort to do so. And I see the Toronto Raptors doing just that. They're going to be looking for ways to fortify that roster around Scotty Barnes. So 45.5 wins. You think they go over or under that?
I think it's under. I really think that Siakam last year, I kind of thought like Porzingis would be the guy traded. It happened. So Siakam, I'm going. I think it's just going to happen. I think
you're calling your shot right now. It's Siakam.
I think the thing is, a lot of players don't want to go the course to Toronto to play, and that's just a thing. So I think it's going to be difficult for this team to bring anybody else in. So I think they got to trade to get pieces. Like you said, where's the picks? Now they have to get picks and try to build this team back up.
Yep.
That's what I feel like we're going to go under next year.
All right. I'm with you too. I think it's under 45.5. I think that's an easy one. What's interesting is if you go under on that bet, it's plus 110. So they really think that Toronto's going to, Toronto is a playoff team, and I get it. It's like you said, when you look at the Eastern Conference in its totality, there's a lot of bottom feeders over there. And that's kind of the fun part about going through these division previews is you can see who's made an attempt to kind of bolster, and the other teams are just like, we're still in fuck it mode. And you don't see a lot of teams in this division in fuck it mode. And, the next one we're going to bring up is the Philadelphia 76ers. They added PJ Tucker in free agency from Miami, Daniel House Jr. from Utah, and a guy from Houston called Traveling Queen. That's his name, Traveling Queen. Did you know that guy existed?
No, I did not.
Shit, I find via trade they traded with Memphis to get DeAnthony Melton. In order to do that, they had to trade Danny Green and David Roddy, who was their first round pick, the 23rd overall pick in the 2022 NBA draft. They still have Paul Millsap and Miles Powell as free agents who haven't signed, who were former members of the Philadelphia 76ers this past season. And right now, their projected starting five, it's a good starting five, man. James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, PJ Tucker, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. Again, you take a look at DraftKings, and they are currently projected 49.5 is the number of wins for the Philadelphia 76ers on DraftKings, Matthew.
Yeah, I'm going to go over, like I said, I'm going to pick them as the winner of this division. I think it just relies on one player, really. I would say James Harden, of course, but pick up the pace a little bit, move the ball more. But I just think Tyrese Maxey, of course, is a guy the last 2 years. I mean, he's only been in the league 2 years. But every year, it seems like he's been in the league. For some reason, when I looked him up, I thought he's been in the league for 3 years. It just seems like he's been in here longer. But it's only been 2. And I feel like he's just surprised a lot of people with his play. And I think he can play good with James Harden, but they got to move the ball more. And be quicker. I just feel like James Harden, of course, holds on to the ball too much. And I think Tyrese Maxey is a guy that's kind of opposite. He wants to get things going. And if they can play alongside each other, this team can be dangerous if they can get along. But yeah, I mean, on paper, it's one of those good paper teams, right? It just, but then also maybe not, because you look at Tobias Harris and there's a lot of doubters out there too, a guy that holds the ball too long too. So this will be interesting, I think, with this. I was just going to ask the question. It's like, is James Harden still on this team by to the trade deadline? Is he traded to Toronto?
No, there's no way. I mean, you look at it before the season even began, and they signed, they re-signed James Harden, I think, to a 2-year deal, if I remember correctly. I'm pulling it up kind of as we talk. Yeah, he signed a 2-year, $68.64 million contract on July 27th. So my assumption is, with all that, there's all kinds of kickers and time frames on when he can be traded, much akin to DeAndre Ayton and now LeBron James. It's like you can't get rid of the guy for a year. So he's definitely going to be there. Suns Geek says in the chat, thank you for following us, Suns Geek. He says Harden isn't going anywhere. He took a pay cut. And what Coach Fallen Founder, one of our elite jamsters, says in the chat, he says DraftKings is thinking injuries for this team. And I can definitely see that thought process. But you're right. Tyrese Maxey is a stud. James Harden, it's going to be interesting to see what version of James Harden the Philadelphia 76ers get this season. But if he has the correct support around him, which I kind of feel he does, I think that he can really be somebody who can, I wouldn't say take games off, but he doesn't have to play as intense as he needs to be for the duration of the season. He just needs to get to the playoffs and really kind of try to kick it up. Now, Obviously, that's a big problem with James Harden, right? He's not really one who's known to like all of a sudden hit a gear and just go. We've seen that the past couple seasons where he's duped teams into thinking that he could do that, but he hasn't actually done that. But you look at their guard depth behind James Harden. You know, you got Furkan Korkmaz, who people love. Matisse Thybulle's considered a shooting guard, even though I see him more as a wing. Again, Tyrese Maxey. You got Shake Milton on this team. You got DeAnthony Melton on this team. So you got Milton and Melton. Isaiah Joe. Again, Trevelyan Queen. He's a shooting guard. So they got plenty of guard play. I just don't know how effective their depth is. You know, you look at the Boston Celtics, and I feel like their depth is really effective depth. I don't know if there's a lot of effective depth on the Philadelphia 76ers, but I feel like from a starting five standpoint, it's probably the second most talented starting five in this division.
Yeah, that was one thing, like, last year, even with Matisse Thybulle, like, it seemed like Matisse was he was a guy that it seemed like a fan favorite. His defense is hustle, but then I think a lot of the fans out in Philly kind of got sick of him because you can't rely on him for too much more. Like, he's a good defender, but there's nothing else you can ask from the guy. He can't give you anything else, and you need something else off the bench. So that's going to be tough. But I also think, too, the toughness maybe in PJ Tucker, like, is that even something anymore for this team? Like, because I think this team is under the most pressure out of any team, I feel like, in the league other than the Suns. I mean, the Nets, I feel like no one really gives a shit. If the Nets have Kevin Durant come back, yeah, there's pressure. But for some reason, just because they're in Brooklyn, it just doesn't seem like it matters. But in Philadelphia, I think it just matters that 100% more. And I think if you're looking at the Philadelphia 76ers and the Suns, I would just say like they both kind of maybe evenly had the same amount of pressure to get back to the finals or get to the finals in Philadelphia's case, because now you have I guess Joel Embiid's healthy. Like, we're talking about health. Like, last year, you finally got the healthy season. He didn't win the MVP. Now this year, it's like he has to do that again. It seems like so much to ask Joel Embiid. It's just to be healthy, and just get through the regular season. And then, hopefully he doesn't throw any of his teammates under the bus or anything. I can always see that stuff happening and things get kind of weird with him if they're not winning. So a lot of pressure on this team, man. I think that Harden has to step up though, because there's an interview with him. He's ready to go. He's ready to go for the season. But I'm just like, I don't know. Can you do it? Can you do it for me? Because I'm a big Harden fan still. I'm still there rooting for him. So I want him to do it just for the fact that I want to believe in this guy.
I just after all this talk, like, I don't know how confident I am in picking this team to win the division now.
Once we talk it out, we're like, oh wait, never mind. Yeah.
Well, that's the fun part though. It's like I'm probably going to change my point of view by the end of this conversation. But you're right on all accounts. You're right on all accounts. Asking this team to stay healthy is tough. This isn't a young, spry team. This has got PJ Tucker. It's got Joel Embiid. Who isn't old, but he plays old because of his injuries sometimes. James Harden is old. Do you know who the highest guy, the highest paid guy on this team is? Fucking Tobias Harris, man. $37.6 million, which is just ridiculous. He's 30 years old. And he's still got a whole nother season after this where he gets paid $39 million. So it's just, a lot of pressure on this Philadelphia 76ers team to come through, to execute with the expectations. Because, again, everything about this team says, hey, did the process work? Right? Did the process work? Well, it's going to be a big year to find out if it did.
Yeah. And also, I mean, when you're talking about the Sixers, I think there's just the thing where is this it though? Like, this might just be it for like James Harden. It might just be it from Joel Embiid. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing guaranteed in the NBA to where you're going to win anything. We just go by names and how they play their stats. And Joel he finally has his full season. But I'm just like, it might just be it for this team. It might be, if not like a blow it up situation, but these guys might just be too old to contribute. And I know they're only 30, like you said, 29. But if it's going to happen, it has to happen this season. It has to happen this season because just like the Suns, Chris Paul's getting old. Like, you need it to happen now to win a championship. They can't wait a couple more years.
I think that Tobias Harris hampers that team so much, not only from a talent standpoint, but from a financial standpoint. I mean, if they didn't have that contract, they could add some real depth to this team that would really, I think, put fear in the opposition, because that there's going to be nonstop coming at you. And again, if James Harden isn't feeling it, or if he's not engaged on this team in any way, shape, or form, this team could tank really quick. I want good things for the 76ers. I don't know why. I think it's just because like they had the process, we had the timeline. We were both two teams that were perennially at the bottom of the top of the lottery and the bottom of the standings. and I saw them start to get some success. And I've always been a fan of Joel Embiid and this team, and I want good things for them. But I'll tell you one team that they're going to be better in then, and that is the team that DraftKings currently has winning 39.5 games this season, and that is the New York Knickerbockers. All right, so what did they do this offseason? Well, they acquired Nikolai Radovic from Detroit via trade. They also acquired via free agency Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein, who I think we both are a fan of that guy.
Hartenstein, right?
Hartenstein, yeah. Hartenstein. The 2022 NBA draft, they got Ousmane Dieng, the 11th overall pick, and Trevor Keels, the 42nd pick. They lost Kemba Walker, Nerlens Noel, and Alec Burks, all to Detroit. They actually traded Ousmane Dieng to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then they lost Taj Gibson to the Washington Wizards. Now, if you remember on draft night, this is a team that went out there and they traded for Jalen Duren, and they traded him to Detroit in an effort to get rid of Kemba Walker. They're trying to clear that cap space because the one and only fucking thing the New York Knicks gave a shit about this offseason is like, we got to get Jalen fucking Brunson. Yeah, so their starting five looks like Jalen Brunson, Evan Fournier, RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, and then they re-signed Mitchell Robinson. This is a team that definitely got weaker somehow, some way, huh?
Yeah, I feel like the whole Jalen Brunson thing kind of flew under the radar where it didn't get as much shit as I thought it would. I thought as soon as I saw Jalen Brunson's going to the Knicks, I thought it'd be a thing where it's like, oh, this is the biggest Knicks thing ever. You go out and spend that much money on a Jalen Brunson who was a backup point guard. You know, he's someone that really proved himself in the playoffs. But it's just like all the money to be, I feel like, invested in this guy. I guess there's no one else. But for me, I was just like, how is this guy really like, is he gonna be like a kind of like a face of the franchise? I know the hustle's there. He might have the best attitude. He might be a good leader. Who knows on this team, because they definitely need it because of Julius Randle. I feel like his tempers flew off. He had some temper issues last year, came out of nowhere, I feel like. And this team just needs some guidance. Maybe he's that guy. But this team is just, it just seems like a roster where it's like a bunch of actors that kind of look like actors, like famous actors, but they're not those actors. And they're just putting together like a B movie. Like that's what it seems like with this. It just seems like players that they can play and the effort's there, but it's just, there's something about them that just, they don't look like real NBA players. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no,
that's
it does. It does. No, I get it. It's like a knockoff of Gilligan's Island or something, you know. It's like Killigan's Island. And you got a guy, you know, it doesn't look like Gilligan. It's just kind of, everybody on the roster. It's like, well, like I get it, but I don't get it together. And that's kind of par for the course when you talk about the New York Knicks. Is it's a team that just can't get out of its own way, can't get the right players in place, and then they invest all this time, money, and effort to get Jalen Brunson. You know, they end up he gets a bag out of it, right? He was a free agent. And he ends up signing, you know, a 4-year, $104 million contract. So he's getting paid $27 million. Now, granted, it's front loaded, $27.7 million this year, $26.3 the next, $24.9 then $24.9. So it is a front loaded contract for them. But that was it for them. They were hell bent and determined on getting Jalen Brunson, and freeing up the cap space to do so. You know, and you look at how they are overall, and they have probably about $11 million under the luxury tax. So you got to look at the Knicks through that lens. This is a team that, again, is playing in this tough division, probably realizes we can't necessarily compete. It's probably tired of hearing from the New York media reminding them that they can't compete. Probably is realizing that the deal that they gave to Julius Randle last offseason, you know, where they paid him a pretty hefty price, you know, 4 years, $117 million that goes into effect this season, probably wasn't the best move. And that's a backloaded contract. So, I mean, he's going to have a player option in 2025-26 for $29.4 million, you know, but it's a team that's just like, they constantly make mistakes. It's like a liar, right? Like somebody who's a chronic liar, what they'll do is they'll tell a lie. And then they'll tell a lie to make up for that lie. And it just gets more convoluted. And then they don't know what the fuck they're talking about 6 lies in. That's how the New York Knicks build their roster. Is they make a mistake and they're like, fuck. So they make another mistake on top of that mistake to make up for the mistake. And it's just a worse mistake. and nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to play for them. And it sucks because when the New York Knicks are good, it's better for basketball. It just is. It's one of those things. And they haven't been good since fucking like John Starks, man, because I don't want to hear about Melo era.
No, they haven't been, and you have names on there that are fun. Obi Toppin, RJ Barrett, of course.
Yeah.
Those Obi
Cam
Toppin
Reddish, who I like.
Yeah, a lot of players on this team that seem like, there's the potential that something's there, right? RJ Barrett, he had some like, oh shit moments last year where it was like, oh, this guy might be a legitimate top 3 pick. And if he can carry that into the season, that'd be great, because I feel like he just needs a confidence. He seems like a guy on the floor where when he's playing, especially a lot of the beginning of last year, it just seemed like he just needed that push. He needed someone to comfort him, to let him know, like, hey, you're actually pretty good. Like, just go ahead and be ball dominant. Maybe that was what took away from this offense or something. Or maybe it's Tom Thibodeau. I don't know how he's still a coach, because he drives those guys into the floor.
I know, right?
I'm surprised he's still a coach. And Obi Toppin is just someone that I feel like can fill a lot of holes for you offensively. Offensively, not defensively, it's like not there. But offensively, he can fill a lot of holes. Kind of be like a little bit. I know he looks like a Amari Stoudemire kind of, but he kind of can be like maybe a Sean Marion more to that offense, where he can just do a lot of little things. Like, he's very, very athletic. So it's a fun team. It's just like, is it because it's New York? Is it because they can't deal with the pressure? Is Derek Jeter the only one that can deal with the New York media and New York
embraces
pressure?
it?
Like, who else can be that guy? And Donovan Mitchell was a name that still floated out there, and in a trade to New York, which it seems like the actual star to go to New York. He just seems like a good fit for that team. He seems like a New York guy.
Yeah, and maybe that's why they have that extra cap space. Maybe, something still might happen this offseason with Donovan Mitchell. And, even if that occurs, though, like, how does this help this team? It really doesn't. You have 2 small guards. You'd have Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell, 2 guys who are undersized, trying to run that offense. And again, that's my whole thing with this team. Like, Jalen Brunson, great player, and he got his bag because he had a great series against the Suns. I wouldn't say a great series. He had a good series against the Suns, but he got his team to the Western Conference Finals, and therefore he got paid for it. And I don't know how effective Jalen Brunson is in the long run. I don't know how his type of play is sustainable in the NBA. I just don't. And this isn't coming from a scorned Suns fan. Okay, I am a scorned Suns fan, but I'm not looking at it through that lens. I don't know if it's a sustainable type of basketball he can play in the NBA. And that's the guy who's bringing up the court every night in New York for you. God, they've got to be pissed there, man. Do you have any Knicks fans in your life?
Do I have any? No, actually,
I
I don't.
Me neither.
I feel like it's by the time they get out here, and they still bring the Giants here. They're still Yankees fans. A lot of these New Yorkers out here, but when it comes to the Knicks, they given up a long time ago. And I feel like what I just thought of was like Jalen Brunson. It's kind of like if Barbosa 13 years ago was signed by a team. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
After
and was their starting point guard.
That's what it reminds. Not saying it's the same kind of play, but it's just the same kind of player. Same kind of contribution you're going to get from the player off the bench, or even be a starter. It just seems like it's a lot of money. So it's strange. Maybe they just let them off the hook and just see how it works this year. But I'm not too confident in the team.
39.5 over under.
I'm going to go under. It just sucks because you're right. When New York's good, it's fun. But I don't remember those days. So I have to just believe you that it was. It's been a while.
I think I'll go under on 39.5 too. I don't see them getting close to 500. This is a team they'll probably win like 37 games. So book it right there, Suns fans. Book it right there. All right, the last team to discuss in the division. Breaking news that just came in during this podcast. Kevin Durant is still a member of the Brooklyn Nets, Matthew. Kevin Durant is still a member of the Brooklyn Nets. Nothing has changed. Taking a look at this team and what they've done there this offseason, the Brooklyn Nets, they've added via free agency TJ Warren from the Indiana Pacers, Aldonis Williams on a 2-way contract. Edmund Sumner signed him as well. They traded the Utah Jazz for Royce O'Neal, gave up some draft picks, I think, in that. I forget what the deal exactly entailed. Via the 2022 NBA draft, none lost. I put Dwayne Washington in here. That's incorrect if you're looking at the draft at the graphic. The Pacers did that. I don't know why that's sitting there. So they didn't lose anybody, but they do have free agents still sitting out there. LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, and David Duke Jr. So you look at their projected starting 5, and in my personal opinion, this is the best starting 5 if it comes to fruition on starting or on opening night for the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving, Seth Curry, Ben Simmons, Kevin Durant, and Day'Ron Sharpe. What are your thoughts? And just so you know, on DraftKings, no over-under on their total number of wins or losses. That's because the Kevin Durant situation continues to be fluid. So
it's up in the air.
It's hard to ask Matthew your thoughts on this team because you're just so hell-bent determined that this is going to be Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Cameron Payne.
No.
The Suns Gorilla is going to be on the team here shortly. So what are your thoughts here?
I bet $100 that only one player on the starting roster will be on that team starting next year. That's going to be
Mikal Bridges. Jake?
No, that's Seth Curry. I think somehow all three of the names of Ben Simmons, Kevin Durant, Kyrie are out. I don't think they're going to stay there. But maybe Ben Simmons will stay. I was looking at this roster. I'm just like, all right, Kevin, why don't you just stay? Because it's a good looking roster.
It makes sense.
Just fucking stay. Like, you can win with this roster, even though I said like, hey, you can't. The only reason I said that, and I was saying that during the whole time, and I'm very confident that Kevin Durant's going to be here, is because like, it just doesn't feel right with them. Names, it looks good, but it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like they can win. But then if they can just play as a team, this team is like unbeatable, I think. Just like there was going into 2 years ago when we played the Bucks in the finals. Going into that year, everyone thought it was going to be the Nets. I can see that again going into this year if Kevin Durant stays.
Yeah, well, the thing about this team, too, is I really like their depth because you look at what they've done behind this starting five. You got Joe Harris, who will be coming back at some point next season. They re-signed Nick Claxton. They re-signed Patty Mills. They got Cam Thomas entering his second year. And again, they brought in TJ Warren as well. So I think that, where we look at the Boston Celtics and go, hey, they've got some good depth in that team, and the Sixers don't necessarily do. The Brooklyn Nets have done that, and they didn't do it this season with LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin and half the guys from the 2012 Western Conference All-Star team. They're doing a good job fortifying this roster with some quality players. So that's what makes this Nets team scary. Again, Kevin Durant, he's got his reasons for wanting to leave, and God willing, he ends up in Phoenix. That's to our benefit. But at the same time, if you look at this on paper, as I was putting these graphics together, and for those of you who are listening, stop by the YouTube page. You'll see the graphics that we put together for this podcast. I looked at that starting five and I was just like, damn, dude, like this is a fucking great team. They've got everything you want. You got Kyrie Irving, who's one of the best when he's on the court. He's one of the best ball handlers in the history of the NBA. You got Seth Curry, who's a knockdown shooter. You got Ben Simmons, who can run point and rebound for you. You got Kevin Durant, who's a top 15 all-time scorer. And then you got Day'Ron Sharpe there playing center, but you're going to bounce that around as much as you can, and you'll probably get some Speedy Claxton, playing some center and go small ball lineups, and you'll have Kevin Durant playing the 5 and small ball line. The versatility of this lineup is just sick.
Yeah, and you mentioned it with the ifs. If like Kyrie's there, if Ben Simmons can pull together mentally, like Ben Simmons is just waiting for the perfect time to return. It's kind of like anything in life where you can't do it because you think you're just projecting it in certain ways where you see it detrimental to you in your future. It's like you just got to get out there and you just go back into it, because I think he keeps thinking he's waiting for the right moment. There's not a right moment, so he has to return. So I think that's what Kevin Durant sees. Obviously, between him and Kyrie, it's like these guys are not focused on winning like I am. Like, I have to win titles before I'm done. I know this whole LeBron thing's happening, but I want it to end where everyone's saying like, oh, wait, what about Kevin Durant? What about him? Wasn't he better than LeBron? So I think he just needs it, and he knows a team like Phoenix wants to win. They're actually, I think, totally opposite of what this roster is for the Nets, where you have guys that just don't know what they're doing, what they want to do in the NBA, where the Suns just want to win. That's all they care about is winning. So that's why I don't want to break it up, man. That's why James Harden probably left too, when they're just getting shit talked to you in practice by Kyrie Irving. But then Kyrie Irving's like, can you even trust that guy on the court? Like, it just doesn't seem like a team you can trust. So it just looks good, man. I don't know. It's crazy how many good names have been in that lineup, and it's going to come to an end probably this season.
Yeah, that's why they play the games, right? Because if it was all on paper, then they'd win it every time. Because that's, like you said, they've had some great
championships every year. Yeah.
every year. So,
Super Bowls every year.
Looking at DraftKings relative to division winners, The Celtics are -135, so clearly the favorite to win the Atlantic Division. The 76ers are +270. The Brooklyn Nets are +500. The Toronto Raptors are +900. And the Knicks are +3,500. 3,500 for the New York Knicks. So if you want to throw your money away, bet on them Knicks.
Yeah, go for it.
So, and any last thoughts on the Atlantic Division before we pack up this podcast, Matthew?
No, not too much. I think I'm good. I think that it's gonna be a nice deep dive into these teams and into these divisions. You just realize how much talent there is out there in the NBA. And like I feel like every time we go into these things, we're gonna be saying like, oh, it's jam packed with superstars, stars. You know what I mean? But that's just every division. So here's another one for sure. We just don't know about one of them in the Nets.
Yeah, that's the state of the NBA, though. And I was having this conversation. So my youngest brother, he's 10 years younger than me. I was having a conversation with him yesterday, and he's like, "Hey, I'm really starting to get into basketball." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I'm starting to get into the history of basketball." I was like, "Oh shit, hell yeah!" He's what am I? I'm almost 40, so he's 30 years old, and for some reason, he's just started to take to it. And I was starting to talk to him a little bit. He was talking about how he watched on Hulu that Lakers show, right? The legacy of the Lakers or whatever, pretty much the Lakers' response to Winning Time on HBO. They're like, no, we want to paint it in our light or whatever. And he was kind of fascinated by the history. I was like, okay, well, if you got nothing to do today, here's an assignment for you. I need you to watch The Last Dance. And I'm like, if everything you need to know about your older brothers, you'll see in The Last Dance. Cause I was a huge Jordan fan growing up. I'm like, this is my era. Right. Then I told him, I go, the state of the NBA right now is so fun to watch. There's so much talent in the NBA, and there's such, because of the integration of the global movement, there's nothing but, as you mentioned, as we go up and down these divisions and up and down these lineups, we're going to see some teams that, even though they are the New York Knicks, like the New York Knicks have some talented players. What hurts them is they just don't make sense together. But again, the state of the NBA is just a beautiful, an all-time high. So
Yep.
Which division should we do on Wednesday, Matthew?
What's next? Central Division? Is that the next one? Is that even a division, or is that just in baseball?
Here's the name of the divisions. You have the Atlantic Division, the Central Division, which is the Bulls, the Cavs, the Pistons, the Pacers,
that was
and the
the
Bucks.
next one.
And then you have the Southeast Division. And that's the three divisions over there in the Eastern Conference. And then we'll move over to the Northwest Division in the Western Conference, the Southwest Division, and then we'll end with the Pacific Division right before the season begins. So the next one we'll do Central Division on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Again, we're from a programming standpoint, we're moving to Wednesdays. So join us on Wednesday for the Central Division preview. Matthew, appreciate you as always hanging out with me. Jamsters, those who hung around in the chat, all two of you, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for watching, subscribe, rate, and review. Hit that thumbs up if you're watching this on YouTube. We appreciate it. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review. We'll read it right here on the podcast. Until Wednesday, everybody have a fantastic evening. All right?
Yep. Go home and love your family, baby.